Josh Allen and Joe Burrow are elite quarterbacks on teams that are battling for a playoff spot. As the calendar now turns to December, who's going to come out on top? Crossover Thursday starts now.
You are Locked On NFL Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome into this Crossover Thursday episode of Locked On Bills and Locked On Bengals. We are proud members of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. And of course, we want to issue a big thank you, shout out, and welcome to our everydayers. Those of you who never miss a single episode, we appreciate y'all being here very, very much. Crossover Thursday is presented by Prize Picks. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. I'm Joe Marino from Locked On Bills. That's James Rapien, the host of Locked On Bengals. And we're here to get you ready for Week 14, where the Bills play host to the Bengals in a high-stakes matchup. James, welcome in. I'm excited to break this one down with you.
Yeah, I'm excited too, Joe. And it's a huge one. Bills-Bengals always feels big, and this one is no different.
No doubt about it. And I think it's going to be really interesting to see what version of these teams show up on Sunday in Orchard Park, where Joe Burrow's back, right? He's back, and that's obviously a different football team with him in the mix. They've certainly played a little bit better on defense lately, and the Bills have been just a roller coaster all season long with showing those high-end performances that we've seen throughout the years, but mixed in with some duds along the way. And so this one matters a ton. James, when you consider this one from the Cincinnati side of things, what's that top storyline entering this matchup?
The fact that they are still somehow, some way in the, not just in the hunt a little bit, but firmly in the playoff mix here in the AFC North. And if you can somehow get a win in Buffalo, you get to 5-8. One of the Bills or one of the Ravens Steelers are going to lose unless they tie, but they play each other on Sunday. And you could be in real position here to make a run at the North, which just, it seemed unlikely and like it went out the window when they lost to Pittsburgh a few weeks ago. It felt like, all right, well, they're just a bad team. They're going to stay bad. And Joe Burrow comes back. The division is poor enough to where I think there are a lot of people that wonder, hey, are they actually going to do this? What they did last year where they win 5 straight and that they are right there in the playoff mix until the Chiefs don't play their starters, and they needed the Chiefs to win in week 18, and that obviously didn't happen. So they've been there. They've done that. They've made these December runs, and people here in Cincinnati and Bengals fans everywhere are wondering if they can really do it again, if Joe Burrow can summon it, knowing all of the flaws they have, because they are a flawed football team. It's not like Joe Burrow showed up and suddenly everything, all of those flaws just go away. But they played really well in Baltimore, and people are wondering if they're capable with Joe Burrow at quarterback of going on a December run here to the playoffs.
I think the AFC North in general has been just one of the most surprising storylines of this season. I thought the Ravens were going to be awesome this year. They don't look so hot. I mean, even as they've gotten healthy in some ways, Lamar just, whether it's injuries or whatever it is, he doesn't look very good. That defense is struggling. And we saw Pittsburgh last week, and boy, that looks like a broken operation. And so an absolutely ripe opportunity for Cincinnati, and they get this one. That'll be huge. And I think for as flawed as we might think the Bengals are, nobody wants to play Joe Burrow in the playoffs, right? That's just what it comes down to. Even if the Chiefs, if they get in, nobody wants to deal with Mahomes. The Bills get in, nobody's going to want to deal with Josh Allen. And I think that's kind of the world that the perceived top teams in the AFC live in, where this landscape's a little bit different this year, but those new names at the top, they're going to have to deal with some serious quarterback firepower if things shape out a certain way. And Cincinnati is surprisingly in that spot. It's been an interesting journey for them, but Joe Burrow back, and I obviously that does change that team in my opinion. Well, my storyline for the Bills is which version of the Bills offense shows up. I think we can all look at Cincinnati's defense and feel like there's a lot of ripe opportunities to attack it. But do we get the Bills offense that can run the ball like crazy and they get 240 plus rushing yards against the Panthers and Steelers? Do we get the Bills offense that can throw the ball all over the yard like they did against Baltimore and Tampa? Do they get the beautifully balanced two-dimensional offense that attacked the Chiefs? Or is it the offense that looked completely flat against the likes of the Texans, Falcons, and the second Dolphins game? And so while this Bengals defense has had struggles, can the Bills take advantage? Does Joe Burrow's return to the lineup impact things, understanding the stress that that's going to put on Buffalo's defense? It's December. The Bills have been a very, very, very good December team under Sean McDermott. This is a big test against Burrow. And let's be honest, in the 2.5 games that we've seen of Burrow against the Bills, they hadn't had a prayer. They haven't had an answer. Burrow's diced them up. And large that Sean McDermott's going to have to find some answers for his defense in this one.
Yeah, I think the offensive side, it's so interesting and such a big factor because I just expect a ton of points. I whether it's James Cook or Josh Allen or both or insert whoever else you want to in that Bills offense. I assume they're going to be able to move the ball. And you're right. What we've seen from Joe Burrow, especially in the second half against the Ravens, it felt like he was back to Joe. And when his back is against the wall, he does perform well. And the Bills have kind of caught him in those spots, obviously playoff moments, big primetime moments where they play. And Joe is usually good in those moments. We saw it on Thanksgiving where this team just came out and they're ready to play and they shine in that spot. I think going on the road for this defense and doing it is much different than what we've seen over the past couple of weeks where, they were pretty good in Pittsburgh on the road, but that's a really, 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 really bad Pittsburgh offense. And then they played okay against the Patriots, obviously played good against the Ravens. But the thing that I don't think is going to happen here is Josh Allen just hands them the ball a couple of times. Like Lamar Jackson, just the uncharacteristic turnovers there. I think you're going to have to force the splash plays a bit. And so can you get the stops on third and 4 when the Bills are either going to go on to score a touchdown or they're going to punt here? The Bengals historically this season at least haven't been able to do that. And so that's a huge, huge challenge. And I just think the basic necessity of tackling is something both of these defenses have struggled with, which to me says Josh Allen and Joe Burrow are going to take advantage of it.
Someone's going to be the AFC Offensive Player of the Week next week, I'm sure.
That's
between these two quarterbacks. You can tell that both sides of this game are very quite nervous about the defensive side and being able to keep the offense in it. And so rest advantage for the Bengals as well, having played on Thursday. I think that's something to be mindful of. That certainly maybe gives them an edge. Obviously, the Bills at home is a big deal as well. All right, we're going to get more into this here on the other side of it. We're going to focus in on the matchups that are going to change the game. And I want to talk specifically about how in the world the Bills are going to find some pass rush against Joe Burrow. We'll break that down here next. Folks, be sure to stick with us. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. The holiday season is one of the best times for sports, bowl games, big basketball matchups, playoff pushes. It's all happening at once. And while we're all making choices every day, one of the most fun places to make the right call is on Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the easiest way to get in on daily fantasy. You just pick more or less on at least 2-player projections. You lock in your lineup, and you're in the game. It's fast, it's simple, and it's available in 45 states, including California, Texas, Florida, and Georgia. I mean, Prize Picks simply adds an extra layer of excitement to the holiday sports schedule. You can create a lineup in less than a minute. The app is super smooth and intuitive, and you can choose from a huge range of unique stats like fantasy score, field goals attempted, free throws made, turnovers, whatever fits your strategy. And the early payout feature is a great bonus. When your lineup starts strong, you may get that option to cash out early. And I love that deposits and withdrawals are quick, fast, and easy, which keeps everything flowing. So download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, it's good to be right. Joe Marino from Locked On Bills and James Rapien of Locked On Bengals getting you ready for a big one here as the Bills host the Bengals on Sunday afternoon. The start of this game is going to be 1 o'clock Eastern time. It was originally the 4:25 game, but it goes to 1 o'clock, and Greg Olson's on the call, which is exciting. I think he's the best in the business, so that'll be exciting.
He's never called a Bengals game. This is his
really?
first one.
This is his first one.
Yep.
All right. The Bills got Olsen earlier this year and a couple times last year. So he's on Fox. So it's a little bit uncommon,
It's
right?
tough.
It's tough. It's weird that this game is on Fox, right? It's the new scheduling stuff. Normally Bills Bengals, that's a CBS game all day long. This one's on Fox.
Yeah, that is going to be weird. And I'm staying home for this one. So I won't be at the stadium, and we'll be watching on the broadcast. And so to see these two on Fox, I just think of CBS and I think of Romo and Nance.
Yeah.
When these two play, and maybe that's not fair, but that's just what I do. So.
Well, I think that was the plan, and then Steelers Ravens, right? And that's probably where Nance and Romo are going to be. And so, all right, let's get in these matchups. And James, I go right to this Bills pass rush. How are they going to affect Joe Burrow, who is coming off of this turf toe procedure? And look, you've watched more Joe Burrow than I have. I felt like he was in a lot of ways Joe Burrow against Baltimore, but I felt like there were some moments where the accuracy got away from him. And I think Joe Burrow is the most accurate quarterback in the league. So when a throw's not where it's supposed to be, it's a little surprising because you're so used to it being so pinpoint. And whatever this thing he's got in his shoe, I think it's got to have some level of impact on the way he plays. But I don't have a lot of confidence in the Bills being able to get any pass rush because over the last 4 games, the pass rush has disappeared. And it was looking so strong coming out of that win over Kansas City, but they've had injuries. Ed Oliver is not available. Michael Hoyt is not available. And Joey Bosa has been playing through a wrist injury, and he left the last game against the Steelers with a hamstring, and his status is up in the air for Sunday. I don't think he's going to play. But even with Joey Bosa, over the last 4 games, the Bills are dead last in the NFL in sack rate at 1.8%. They have 2 sacks in the last 4 games. They're 30th in pressure rate. They're 31st in pressure rate over expectation. They're 22nd in average time to pressure. I mean, look, maybe there's some opportunities to attack this Bengals offensive line, but the Bills have not found a way to affect opposing quarterbacks. Now, they've actually played some good defense over those last 4 weeks, but it's been more coverage than it's been pass rush. And obviously we know that between Jamar Chase and the potential return of T. Higgins, that's a tough order to hold up in coverage against those guys if your pass rush is not getting home. And so how are the Bills going to get pressure on Joe Burrow? That's a big question for me.
Yeah, I think it's a huge one because if you're going to come up with a scenario to slow down this Bengals offense, even with or without T. Higgins, and he's moving through concussion protocol, and we'll have an idea ahead of Sunday's game if he's going to play or not. I think it's pressuring Joe Burrow because they've found a running game. They've been able to unlock Chase Brown. They've been able to hold up in the passing game, but even with Joe Flacco, when Joe Flacco came in, and he's a statue. I mean, the thing that impressed me most about Joe Burrow on Thanksgiving night is how well he moved. I mean, he was moving and looked pretty much like Joe. I think we all kind of made faces when he started to do the Joe Burrow thing a little bit and said, get rid of it. But I thought he moved well in the pocket. I think that's just going to get better and better. And so for an offensive line that I thought for the most part held up with a statue back there and Joe Flacco, and they found a way to get the running game going with Flacco. Now you have Burrow, who obviously can go off script and has that playmaking ability and can buy that extra half second to 2 seconds sometimes and keep his eyes downfield. Yeah, getting pressure on him, I think, is the key. And so this Bengals offensive front, they need to continue to do what they've done. And he was only sacked once against Baltimore. Obviously, that Ravens defensive line and that defense, they've struggled to consistently get pressure. And so Orlando Brown Jr., he's had an up and down year. I think overall solid at left tackle. Amarius Mims starting to come on after a slow start. I think he's been better in recent weeks. And then the interior, Ted Karras has been pretty darn steady. And then you have 2 guards, one a third-round rookie in Dylan Fairchild, who I think is playing really, really well and is a promising future and is ready to go now, and Dalton Reisner, who's come on to grab that right guard job. Like I think they feel comfortable with all 5 of those guys. And so can they hold up their end of the bargain? If they do, I think that the Joe Burrow puts up big numbers against the Bills. Like I just expect that to happen. And maybe that's unfair. And that is really no knock on the Bills. I just think if Joe Burrow has time, that's a really tough place to be if you're any defense.
I go back to the 2023 game. Sean McDermott was a defensive play caller. They blitzed him a lot relative to the Bills, who are not a super blitz aggressive team. I think it was over 30%. They blitzed him. And I think maybe Burrow was like 14 of 14 against the blitz in that game. It's so they're trying to figure something out. Right. And I don't know what the answer is going to be because the pass rush is ice cold. And so you're relying on your coverage, which gets me to another big matchup to me, which is Jamar Chase against Christian Benford. I think Jamar Chase is probably the best receiver in the NFL, certainly in the top 3. And he's got a quarterback that's been throwing the ball for the last decade, right, in Joe Burrow. And so I think that Christian Benford is going to draw that assignment, who had a lot of success last week against DK Metcalf. But with all due respect to DK Metcalf, he's not the nuanced player that Jamar Chase is. And I mean, I would even argue that Jamar Chase, despite not being as big as DK, is a more physical player. Like that's Jamar's, that's his superpower, is he's just stronger than everybody. It doesn't matter. Yeah. It's unbelievable to watch him play. The play strength is elite. And Christian Benford's played really well of late. I thought in 2023 and 2024, I think he had a claim of being a top 5 corner in the league. In fact, last year he allowed less yards per coverage snap than Patrick Surtain, who was the NFL Defensive Player of the Year. He's a really good player. He's played really well since week 6 in particular. He struggled to start the year, but week 6, he really, really came on. But it's a different ballgame, right? This is Jamar Chase. And so Chase is going to make his plays. There's no doubt. Can the Bills limit him enough where it's not a Jamar Chase takes over the game, they throw it to him 15 or 20 times, he has 10 or 15 catches for, well over 100 yards and a couple scores? We know that's possible. So can Christian Benford do enough to limit Jamar Chase to avoid that type of performance, especially with no pass rush?
Yeah, if I was going up against Jamar, I'd want to hold him to like 8 for 80.
Sure. Can I sign up for that right now? I'd take it.
Like that's the goal, where it's like, oh yeah, we're fine if you have 8 catches, which you wouldn't say about really any player in the league, or not many players.
Yeah.
And if you keep him under 100 yards, like last week, 7 for 100 plus, and it's because of those laid hands and his play strength, and it makes a deep catch downfield, and that's it. He's a really tough cover. And I do think it's significant, though, if they get T. Higgins back, because the Bengals, they struggled in the red zone against the Ravens. And that, to me, that won't win this week. You're not going to be able to do that. You're not going to, because you're not going to force 5 turnovers. That's unrealistic. And so you got to cash in when you get down there, and not having T. Higgins, I thought that was a significant reason. Obviously, Joe Burrow's rust and play calling. There's a bunch of factors, I would say, that people would complain about. But when you swap out T. Higgins or Mitch Tinsley for T. Higgins, that's a significant downgrade. So if you can have T. Higgins out there, that's going to matter a ton. I agree with you on Jamar. I think really any matchup is interesting to me when it comes to these receivers, because defenses always play differently against the Bengals than they do against basically anyone else when they have Jamar and T out there, because it's so unique. And so, yeah, I'm excited to see how that works. The other side of it, and I've talked about it a few times this week already, the James Cook evolution. Like, he was so good on Sunday against the Steelers, and just how patient he is. It's weird saying this because obviously you don't want Josh Allen to take over the game. But I think if you let James Cook do what he did against the Steelers, there's really not a path where you're going to slow down this Bills offense, because Josh Allen can obviously make a play at any point. And so you got to limit James Cook if you're this Bengals defense.
Yeah, James, this is now the 14th time that I've done a crossover discussion, and I would say most of the other hosts come in here and say, boy, we got to slow down James Cook. It's like, well, Josh Allen's a quarterback. Are you worried about that? And really,
no doubt,
right,
no doubt.
And I didn't mean that as a hey, you should have brought that up. I mean, it's the reality of the situation. When this run game is cooking, it's a problem. And I think you can look at, I can point to any metric for the Bills rushing offense, and I can show you that it's at the top of the league. I can point to any metric for the Bengals run defense and show you that it's at the bottom of the league. It's, it's kind of a good versus bad there. And I'm curious to see, like you said, the Bills get a lot of different looks as well, based on Josh and his dual threat ability. And of course, what this run game is, how does Cincinnati combat that? What do they have up their sleeve with a couple of very young linebackers, and maybe not the depth that they need up front with their defensive line to maximize what they have in Slayton and Hill up front?
Yeah, I think it's the factor, because if James Cook gets going, those 3rd and 4s I mentioned, when you do finally get it to a 3rd and 4, Josh Allen's going to say, okay, I'll make this play. I'll get 5. And maybe it's with his legs. Maybe it's not. Maybe he'll find, maybe Dalton Kincaid plays this week. And I think that's another huge factor.
Yeah.
Is just tight ends in general. And it doesn't have to be Kincaid. Like it could be Dawson Knox. It could be insert whoever that I'm missing on the depth chart. Like the Bengals have just been so bad against tight ends that I could totally see, it's 3rd and 8, big play here. And Josh Allen just finds insert whatever tight end over the middle for 15 yards. And so the Bengals defense has to be ready for that.
And the Bills have missed Kincaid over the last 3 weeks. He's still
No
the
doubt.
team's leading receiver. He's really come on in year 3. I think he's got a good chance to go this week, and obviously that'll be important in a game where I think we're both very clearly expecting a lot of points. All right, folks, coming up next, we're going to get into the winning script, the keys to victory for both sides of this matchup, so be sure to stick with us. All right, James, both teams got to have it. The Bills are the 7 seed in the AFC. The division is not looking good. In fact, the Bills' next game is against New England. If New England wins that game, coming off the bye, they win the AFC East. It'll end the Bills' 5-year run on top of the division. And we know that what's at stake for Cincinnati, they have a chance to come in and do this. And I mean, based on the way that Pittsburgh and Baltimore are playing, I know we talked about at the beginning that Cincinnati's got to feel like they got a real shot to do this. And, Joe Burrow's a really special quarterback. So for Cincinnati to come into Buffalo and get this win, what are your keys?
First things first, this offense has to be the reason why. I know the defense has bounced back some and they've been sneaky good and not historically bad over the past couple of weeks, or however you want to describe it. Guess what? Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, they're the reason why you're going to win games in December. You need to lean on your stars. And so your stars have to be stars. And obviously Bills fans have seen that from Joe Burrow and seen that from Jamar and T in big moments. That has to continue. And if that continues, you'll have a real shot. Defensively, I'm not expecting them to be this juggernaut, clearly. But the thing they've done over the past few weeks that really coming into the year, I thought that they would be able to do is just create splash plays. Doesn't have to be turnovers. Obviously, it was against the Ravens. They had a pick six a couple of weeks back as well. Like that might not happen. But tackles for loss, sacks, big plays, momentum shifters, that's what this defense needs to do is produce those splash plays. So that's a key for me. And then the third one, keep this run game going. Chase Brown has had 100+ yards from scrimmage in 6 straight games. That's a team record. They've really unlocked him after a slow start to the year for him. That needs to continue. You're on the road. Yeah, Joe Burrow's going to throw it a lot. Some to Chase Brown. He's a big part of the passing game, but he's been averaging 5 yards plus per carry in recent weeks. They need that to continue because if they do that, 1, it's going to keep Josh Allen on the sideline. 2, it's going to keep Joe Burrow upright. And if you can keep Joe Burrow upright, I think you're going to have a chance in this one.
Man, that's surprising. Corey Dillon never did that, huh? Never had 6 straight, or Joe Mixon. That's it's impressive that he's claimed that. By the way, Chase Brown should have been the Heisman his last year at Illinois. I'll fight that battle.
Wow. Look at that.
Come on. Look at the numbers. It wasn't close, man.
Was it 328 touches or carries? I think it was 328. I might be off on that, but he had a ton of touches.
I thought he was the best player in college football that year. And so I've been a closet Chase Brown fan for a while. Hopefully he doesn't do too much on Sunday, but
328, he averaged 5 yards a carry, 1,600+ yards and 10 rushing touchdowns. Also had 240 receiving yards. There you go. So I'm just making your case for you.
Thank you. I wasn't prepared to defend that in this conversation, but I have in the past. I think he was clearly the Heisman winner in my opinion. When I consider this Bills path to victory, number 1 for me is finishing drives. We're expecting both offenses to move the ball a ton, but if you're not scoring touchdowns, you're leaving a lot of meat on the bone, and you can't leave meat on the bone where we're expecting a lot of points. The Bengals D has given up the most points in the NFL, the most first downs. They're 28th in the red zone. This can't be a week where the Bills offense is not clicking. They can't be flat. They cannot be flat. And you got to finish drives. This is a game where field goals won't cut it. And I think the Bills defense will have their hands full. You're going to look at numbers this week, and the Bills are the number 1 pass defense in the NFL. Those are volume stats. Nobody should care about them, right? Like part of that is because the Bills can't stop the run, right? That's why they haven't given up much passing yards. Now, their EPA numbers are very good. They're top 5 in pass defense, but I don't think any of that matters in this type of game with that type of quarterback and this type of receiving talent. And so the Bills have got to finish drives. They've got to finish drives, and you cannot be settling for 3 when you got chances to get 6. Number 2 is you got to pound the rock. Yeah, this is a Josh Allen, Joe Burrow game, but James Cook has got to be a huge part of your formula offensively. We say it's let James cook. This has to be a let James Cook game. And obviously he had over 30 carries. The Bills ran the ball over 50 times against Pittsburgh. And the Bills have had some of these games where they run the ball a ton, and they do it in different ways. They're very multiple with how they can run the football. Against Pittsburgh, it was duo. Against the Panthers, it was this toss zone play. And so, what is that formula against this Cincinnati team to maximize your rushing output and do it and stick with it? And then number 3 is the biggest challenge that I don't have an answer for is how do you make Joe Burrow uncomfortable? They've only played 2 official games, and the Bengals are 2-0 with Burrow. He went 54 of 80 for 590 yards, 4 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. The stats from the DeMar game don't even factor into that. It didn't look like the Bills had a prayer of slowing him down in that game. And let's be honest, like that playoff game, it was well in hand for a while. It wasn't like Joe Burrow had to go out there and continue, doing what he was doing. Yeah. And so it's as bad as I've ever seen a defense look under Sean McDermott against a quarterback continuously. And we'll see what answers he has. And I don't know where the pass rush comes from, but you got to figure out some type of plan, whether it's your disguise elements, how you cover, whatever you space the field, your simulated pressures, whatever it is, you got to be right about it, because Joe Burrow is capable of going in there and throwing for 400 yards and 4 touchdowns. And I don't think anybody be surprised if that happens. The Bills got to find a way to not let that happen. So we're going to come down to these defenses, James. That's what I'm feeling. Which defense can show up and give their offense the best opportunity?
Yeah, no, I think it's a great point. And in the simulation part of it, good luck confusing Joe Burrow, but maybe that is the best route, because blitzing him is risky. Blitzing him is not something that I would recommend, but you need to get there. You need to get home at some point, because if you don't, it's just like Josh, they do it in different ways.
Yeah.
But it's very much the same. When you're on the other side of it, it feels inevitable. Like it feels, oh, well, you can't give him that much time. He's going to find someone. That's what happens with these great quarterbacks. And both of them are great. And it's going to be a fun matchup. I'm excited for it. Both teams obviously playing for potential division championships, trying to get back into that mix. And the Bills could, you win the next 2 games. It's very much like the Bengals from that aspect, even though the records are different. The next 2 weeks are huge for both teams.
All right, we're going to find out. Big December football. This is what makes it fun and exciting. So make sure you are staying dialed into both Locked On Bills and Locked On Bengals. We have you covered pre and post game. James and Jake, they do a phenomenal job over there on Locked On Bengals. One of my favorite podcasts to listen to. I think you guys have great perspective and great overall analysis on the Bengals. So keep on doing what you're doing. And if you're on the Bengals side, you want to get the Bills equation, come check out Locked On Bills. All right, folks, that's going to do it for us here today. Thanks for being here. As always, we kindly ask that you share, subscribe, rate, and review. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll catch up with you again real soon.